Okay, this is a comic book review of a 1954 comic, Dell 4-color number 598, featuring the only appearance of Captain Davy Jones. This is what Davy Jones did before he became a rock singer and joined the Monkees. And this came out, as I just said, I think 1954. Just to get the credits out of the way, the painted cover, Dell was famous for doing awesome painted covers, is uncredited. The writer is uncredited. In the interior art is a guy named Ernie Schroeder, who, as far as I could find out, this was his only Dell Comics credit. He did work for other of the smaller companies in the 40s and 50s, and I like his art quite a bit. We'll be talking about that when we go through the book.
He reminds me a lot of Winslow Mortimer.
You know, I think you're right. It's a good comparison. And he draws really nice ships. I don't know if he got this job specifically because he liked drawing ships or whether he was thinking the whole time, I gotta draw another ship, it's driving me nuts! But he does do good ships.
Before we get too far from Davy Jones and the name thing,
Uh-huh.
Since you brought up the Monkees, I will have to point out that there was another musician named Davy Jones who could not use that name, so he took the name of his favorite knife, and thus was born David Bowie.
Oh, you know, I think I may have known
I've
that, but I
mentioned
didn't
that to you before.
Okay.
I've mentioned that one to you before. And I'm also curious if the origin of Davy Jones, if you believe in Devil Jonah,
yeah.
or if you believe in the...
Of course, you have the Davy Jones locker was already around, and that version of
Well,
Davy...
by this.
Yeah.
But as we get to teach,
yeah.
it's not shown up in popular culture yet.
That's true.
It's not until a little after his death that it's first quoted.
Yeah, but I think they grabbed the name because it had that nautical connotation.
But I was just talking about the nautical connotation itself.
Yeah.
You know, Devil Jones,
yeah.
or Devil Jonah as the one, or the governor that put people into press gangs, or the tavern keeper that knocked people out, dropped them in lockers, and then they woke up.
Actually, it makes you think whether or not they gave enough thought to the name, since the history of that name is not terribly heroic.
One of the things about it that I always think of is that it's like the 90s where they try and take all the bad guys and make them good guys.
Yeah.
That this is like an early version of that. It's like, you know, Venom's popular. Everybody likes Venom. We'll make him a good guy.
And they whip him out and he's not interesting anymore. So, all right. So there's the cover. And the inside front cover is just a little bit of history. Dell took pride in putting out family-friendly stuff and saying that it was educational. So this is really a history of Yankee merchant shipping, and just gives you a sense of the time frame that this is set in. And this was the sort of thing that let Dell get away with never joining up with the Comic Codes Authority when that came into being a few years after this, because nobody ever had any complaints about their stuff.
For our own historical note, we are recording this in Florida, not too far from Tampa, which it is Gasparilla Weekend,
okay, so
which is celebrating our own local pirate history.
Okay.
Once again, turning the bad guys into good guys since they raided Tampa. And now they come and pass out beads.
Okay. Okay, in page 1 of the story, we meet Captain Davy Jones and his first mate, Mr. Johnson.
Who is not named until like halfway through the book.
So he's not. Actually, they may use his name
and his first mate.
In the second one, the second
there he
panel,
is. Yes, they do mention him there. Okay,
Mr. Johnson. But they are a little
but
slow
at naming
people. We're gonna meet the bosun Bull Slocum like 2 or 3 pages before they actually bother to tell us his name. So they are a little slow in that case. One thing I'll say that will be obvious in a scene later on is Davy Jones and Mr. Johnson. I think if this had been a regular series, you would have had to have changed Mr. Johnson's character design, because you can't always immediately tell them apart. They're very similar. They have the same sideburn, dark hair thing going on.
Which is actually probably realistic to a certain degree. But the other part of it is
redhead, give him a scar, something, so he looks different from... Because they're side by side a lot naturally, and you want to immediately know who's who.
Yeah, but of course it's the problem of they're both heroic. Yeah. They're both noble guys, so they both have to have that noble look.
Yeah.
And within the confines of the time period, it's only so far that you can go and get.
Yeah. And we see, we see right here, this is like got to be late 18th or early 19th century, because that's an American flag. It's upside down, but this is after the Revolution, which gives you an idea of the setting. And that means a lot of potential for future stories, because you had the Barbary Pirates things going on. You had constant run-ins with the British, who would stop American merchant ships and press gang the crew. You had an unofficial war with the French about this time. So giving it this time period after the Revolution, but real early in the country's history, where we didn't have much of an official Navy, and if you were a merchant, you often had to look out for yourself, opens up a lot of future, if this had been a series.
Yeah, they'll mention later, there's not enough naval vessels to deal with piracy right now.
Yeah.
You know, we all look up to you, Captain Davy Jones.
Yeah.
Can you go into them to your locker?
We find out that Jones is nosy, because when he sees that distress signal, even though he has no official standing, he rides out to find out what's going on.
See, I didn't read him as nosy. I read him as being, oh, we will go out and help.
That's probably a fair interpretation. And they meet Richard Teach, and he's obviously modeled after Blackbeard, even though he was dead some roughly years before. Like 80 to 100 years after Blackbeard existed. And of the last names that they think Blackbeard really had, Teach is the most common one. Thatch and Drummond are both possibilities. He's always Edward Teach or Edward Thatch, right? Here they keep Teach, and they keep an obviously Blackbeard influenced design, but
they change which king he's named after. So they change it from Edward to Richard.
Richard, yeah.
And they also changed the name of his boat.
Because he's Sea Rover. Yeah, Queen Anne's Revenge was the original.
Or the Adventure.
Or the Adventure later on, yes.
Yeah, and he's in, and it's neither one.
The one thing I'll make comment on about Teach is that I really think they were trying too hard with a lot of the referential names. It has a problem a lot of referential stuff does, in that the reference becomes the entirety of it.
Yeah.
It would have been an interesting mystery if they kept it more questionable who this guy was, instead of, no, he's a bad guy. It's obvious he's a bad guy.
Actually, I think that's a fair criticism, because a lot of this is finding the proof that Teach is a pirate. And if it had been a mystery to us as the readers, it was potentially... I like this story a lot, as it's going to be obvious as they talk about it. But I think that's a fair criticism. If they hadn't gone with the obvious Blackbeard vibe with him, would we have gotten a nice mystery? Is it Teach? Or maybe we're wrong and it's not.
It would also make us... As we go on, we're going to go and meet the cabin boy, who is going to be the person who is figuring things out.
Yes, he'd be in the Scooby Gang in later years.
Yeah, but the problem is that because we already tipped off, we are going to be more sympathetic to him and his point of view.
Yeah, exactly.
And less sympathetic to the kind of not even necessarily doubt, the kind of don't bother me of the boatswain.
Yeah.
And the very legalistic kind of manner of Captain Jones himself. I am certain that he is a lawyer before he becomes a seaman.
He definitely
we'll see that in a few pages.
Okay. Ready for page 2?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sure the audience is too.
Okay, and we find out that Teach is claiming to have had to fight off a pirate, and he also mentions that his boat is only lightly armed, which will be a plot point later on. And they row in to see the chief naval officer, and Teach is just mad at him. Why aren't you, which means he's got a lot of moxie. I mean, evil moxie. But he's the pirate that's actually robbing people, and he's going in and yelling out, this is brilliant plan. If I yell at the Navy captain...
they won't suspect me.
Yeah, exactly, and it's really not a bad plan. You wouldn't expect the pirate.
If I did not look so menacing,
it might work.
Perhaps it would work better.
It might work. Now, if unless there's anything specific here, I'm going to go on to the next page.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I did love the expression that Davy Jones had when he was like, "Oh, I wouldn't do that. Captain Ainsley is very nice." You can already see him being very wry at him.
Right. Now here was a tricky bit of writing, because we're told that the Navy captain, Ainsley, is a good officer and just doesn't have the resources to do his job right. But we're never shown. It's an informed ability. And if this had been a continuing series, one would presume they would have taken advantage of Davy being a merchant, and there would have been stories set in Europe and Africa and the Caribbean and the Far East and all that. But it would have been tricky if in any story set in Boston, if Ainsley never was able to do anything worthwhile, then why would anyone have any respect for him? Here apparently everybody but Teach respects him, so he does do a good job.
Yes, he's got the Captain Gordon problem, right? The Commissioner Gordon problem.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is why Davy has to step in and become pirate hunter. So there would have been a danger if Ainsley had been a continuing supported character of just making him completely useless when he's supposed to be a trained Navy officer. It is historically accurate, by the way, that the Navy, which was very, 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 very small at this time, did not have the resources to always do the job it needed to do.
Yes, because we use the French for our Navy.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so the local merchants, or presumably they're not identified, but I think it's a fair guess they're the local merchants, come up and ask Davy to take a hand. There's
the upstanding citizens of the town of Boston.
And I was telling you how Ernie Schroeder draws nice ships. That's a really nice panel there. I like that.
That's good art.
Yeah, with the moon placed to help highlight the well composed as well as just well drawn.
Oh, definitely.
But here we get Willie Hawkins, and we get the bosun, who we don't find out for a couple of pages, is named Bull Slocum. Okay. But one of the things I like about this, that I think would have been a strength of a continuing series, was their relationship. Willie obviously does run off and do things alone, and the bosun's mate would have been the drill sergeant of the ship. Everybody was supposed to be scared of him. He enforced the discipline. And Willie, since he's accepted as the cabin boy, he probably is well disciplined most of the time, but he doesn't. He's not scared of Bull at all. It's like a big brother little brother relationship. And
yes, but the problem that Bull has though is that he seems so disengaged from anything that ever goes on. He would much rather be taking a smoke, a nap, something. Than doing whatever. And we also didn't mention the Hawkins reference to Treasure Island.
Yes, that's true.
William Hawkins instead of Jim Hawkins.
Yeah, so it's obviously referencing that. But Willie there, he would be part of the Scooby Gang. He wants to investigate all these weird going on. Everybody just has second thoughts about Teach, and he wants to take a look at the Sea Rover and what's going on.
Yeah. And the exact opposite of the incurious Bull.
Yep.
Which that could be an interesting dynamic in of itself.
It could.
You got like a more laid back sort of character, and then
which is one of the things that makes you wonder about him as boatswain, because he just seems so laid back. Does he not have to intimidate anybody because everyone just is so well disciplined?
No, I think that if you did step across the line, Bull would be all over you. I think his laid back thing is because it is a well run ship with a captain everybody respects. But if you messed up, he would be on you like feathers on a duck, and you would regret it. I do not know if the American Merchant Navy did corporal punishment, whether if Willie got too far out of line, Bull could bend him over the cannon and cane him. I don't know if you could do that in the Merchant Navy, or if they did do it. But
I don't know much about.
It's probably one of those things that definitely yes at some point.
Yeah. Probably.
The question is if it's been phased out now.
I suspect in the past that Willie has occasionally crossed the line and Bull has had to come down on him. So it's just also all the more to
he couldn't have come down on him that hard because he's still just eager.
He's oh boy, let's go get him, guys. But he's not Scrappy Doo. Everything he does is like he's finding real clues.
Yes.
Yeah. So
he's not just being the precocious kid. He actually does.
He actually does. Yeah, when he does something, even if he's taking a chance he shouldn't.
Yeah, he's much more Fred and Velma than he is Scrappy Doo or Shaggy.
He's definitely not the Scrappy here. So he sneaks aboard the Sea Rover and he sees this big, huge, at least a 32-pounder, as he says, which was probably much bigger. Most guns on ships would have been 12-pounders, 18-pounders. A lot of merchant ships would have had even smaller. So this big whopping gun is bigger than even a lot of guns on actual warships. And so Teach said he was lightly armed. So what's going on here?
But it's not the 40 guns of a Queen Anne's Revenge or something.
Still,
but still enough for his curiosity to be, now my curiosity becomes suspicious.
And I like, in this panel here, I like the way they lit it. To really get the sense that it's the oil lamp giving you something that would other be, and the use of shadows. It's really very nicely drawn. I like Schroeder's art. Clean, realistic, and it tells the story well.
Well, one of the things at the time is that it's very easy still to always go and put in the shadows and stuff with your inks, but it's actually harder at that time to do the color separations that you need to do that kind of effect. You have to really be thinking about what you're doing first.
I'm going to say, this is actually a really good example of how to do sequential art right, by having him looking in and then cutting into the inside of the ship and then cutting back out towards Blackbeard. It's a really great example of how
he's moving the camera angle, so to speak, around.
In a way you couldn't do any other media.
Yeah. Well, there's also stage direction that occurs within the page itself, because in the first panel he's looking off to the right side of the panel, which draws your eye to the human face on the right one, which is looking down. Because there's a different color in that center one, it keeps drawing you back towards that towards that center right panel, because even in the center left panel, he's still pointed that way, but at enough at an angle that it brings you down to the dynamic action that's below.
Yes.
The whole page is actually thinking about itself.
Yes, and so everything flows, not just the position of the panels, the way the art is in it, the story flows along in the completely smooth manner.
Yeah, and in fact, there's even kind of the opposite direction at the end to say, stop at the end of this page.
Yeah.
Because, there's the action of Teach pulling him back away from it.
And we find out here that Teach is pretty ruthless, but if they had gone with a less obvious I'm a pirate character design, even this wouldn't have said for sure. We would have found out that
he could just be a gruff guy.
A gruff guy, yeah. But
of course, we might as well mention here that actual Teach apparently, as far as we know, never killed any of his hostages. He was not ruthless to his crew.
One argument for all the crazy things that Teach did, like the slow burning matches in his beard and all,
was psychological warfare.
That he really wasn't nuts. On the other hand, he's said to have 14 wives, and several of them committed suicide rather than staying married to him. So, and he was a pirate. So you just don't. There was some crazy town in him, but just.
Someone who uses that much psychological warfare may not necessarily be the best husband material.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
You'd want to use that in any sort of argument, and that would probably get pretty frustrating.
Yeah, in your relationship, that would be.
That'd be really bad.
That's not conducive.
Now here, Willie spills his guts because he's scared to death, but it's not like he was a secret spy. He's not giving secret information or anything. He's just explaining who he is because he's been caught by the captain of the ship, and he's technically in the wrong here. So
see, I didn't read him as being especially scared. I read his gasping as I'm being choked by my shirt because you're holding me by it.
I kind of got.
So he's still being kind of brave because he's just saying this is just the honest truth.
But Teach throws him overboard, apparently planning on killing him by just throwing him down onto the hard
dock.
they're
going to give him like a 20-foot drop onto cobblestones.
And now we see, we were talking about Slocum having that laid-back thing, but when he's got to move quick to save Willie, he does. And another effective shifting of the camera angle. You have looking up in this one, and then looking down in this one. And I think it's done very well. It gives you a sense of the danger and the action, and heightens everything.
I didn't like the flow as much. I thought it was just a little bit confusing. Just like the way it kind of shifts over to the portrait there of the boat.
Oh, this cut is a little too abrupt.
It's a little too abrupt. I was kind of hoping if you saw
a
close-up shot of the cabin boy looking down at the drop and seeing the boat. I think that would be a better way to
maybe a shot of Bull from the cabin boy's point of view here.
Right, because you have no idea that he's nearby.
Well,
all he's in hearing distance, but you don't even know where he is.
Yeah, that's true.
But the way I kind of read that was that he was trying to have his appearance be as much a surprise to the reader as it was to the boy and to Teach. But as a reader, you do want to have more connection, and he could have done that even more simply by simply having him in the long shot of the boat. And if you could just see the back of his head or his shoulders, that would have been enough to ground you that, he's right there, he can make that run.
Yeah.
Because it's never clear where his positioning is. The way
that's true until you get to here.
Well,
you don't have his starting point.
Well, even there, he kind of it just because of the way it's framed, it doesn't. It feels like there's kind of a sort of a jarring shift of where he actually is.
Yeah, I can see that. So but he does catch
that kid.
He catches the kid. And Willie, are you all right? You get the sense that Willie's not just one of the crew. There's a real friendship, and I really think you can say not a father-son, but more like an older brother, younger brother, mentor relationship here.
Because the father-son is reserved for the captain.
Right, and he can't get that too emotional. He's the bosun, he's the disciplined guy, so it's like, geez, I thought you were going to die, Willie. It's not that. It's I bit my pipe in half, And
but I think that is also just part of that general malaise that he has, is that really he would rather have been smoking.
Yeah, I do. I want to say something about Captain Davy Jones here. The reason I really don't like him, and this is the start of it, he seems to take the fact that his cabin boy has has a murder attempt on his life with just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, because he's saying, and he actually tried to kill you.
Eyewitness from
Well, at this point, he's only referencing Bull. Apparently, he hasn't spoken to Bull yet. But once again, it's kind of like, why would you kind of disbelieve your cabin boy in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
there's no reason to disbelieve.
Well, of course, I get the feeling that Willie does this sort of thing all the time.
Yeah,
so,
but here's the thing.
Yes, but then his reaction would be kind of like, oh, someone tried to kill you again, Willie. Not really. Someone tried to kill you. No, it would have been someone tried to kill you again.
That's right. It's Tuesday.
Tuesdays and Thursdays are murder attempts, and Wednesdays are kidnappings.
Well, I'm saying it makes him seem kind of detached from his own crew, and that's not a good thing to have in a heroic captain figure. You should present him as he's really passionate and loving about his crew.
It cuts his nobility.
Yeah.
It makes him seem more like, oh, you almost died.
But once again,
I'm still going to question you anyway.
But once again, this is our first instance of his lawyerness. Mm-hmm. He is the judge, and he is going to be skeptical of everyone that approaches him.
And I think, had this been a continuing series, I still think that actually could have worked, because Willie and Bull always would have been our point of view characters, our sympathy characters. Mm-hmm. And Davy would have been like up there as the hero captain, just out of sight of us normal people, the way he would have been to his crew. So it's arguable, and your point is actually a very good one. But I think going with that vibe with Davy might have worked as long as Willie and Bull worked as the people we identify with.
He has to walk the Picard line.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He has to be just removed enough and dispassionate enough, but still give you enough insights to let you know that, he really does care.
Yeah. He can't go play poker with the crew like Picard did, and then they started doing bad movies instead of... Yeah.
Well, I think that was actually a good, for his character, him playing poker with the crew worked later on. But anyway.
Yeah, okay.
They're all officers, it's okay.
Yes. Everybody's an officer on the Enterprise. Well, okay, different... Never mind. Okay, but I was talking earlier about Mr. Johnson and Jones having too close together a character design. I mean, you have to look at this and think about it to figure out who is who.
Yeah.
When you should just be able to look and say, there's Jones, there's Johnson.
Yeah, he's got the kerchief, so he has to be the captain.
Yes,
he's got more frills.
Yeah. So, but he...
Plus, he's also the guy obviously in charge.
Okay. So Davy tells him about that big whopping 32-pounder, and Jones still wants to investigate. Don't say anyone to anything. Do you hear? Because
anything
it's not proof yet. Yeah, it's not proof yet. So he goes. He's looking around himself. Another nice ship. I really hope Bernie Schroeder enjoyed drawing ships, because he got stuck with it a lot in this. And he confronts. He confronts Teach, who's just very, very. Short-tempered with him, and has an explanation when we get to the... I'm going to jump to the next page.
Yeah, but he even Teach admits, yes, I tried to kill someone.
Yes, but he was trespassing on his private property.
But he deserved it. He's a minor. He is not a real person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that works for within the time period, but as a story, it really makes Captain Davy Jones seem like an idiot. Like, oh, you just killed one of my
But there's nothing legally you can do right now. Teach was technically in the right because he was throwing a trespasser off his ship.
That's fine. It's the way he goes about it.
Yeah.
Yes, but there's also a time period difference between us and 1950s.
Yeah.
And just as a side on the art and the boats and everything else, my art friend from the 50s and 60s used to end up drawing a whole bunch of westerns, and he swore off of them because he got tired of drawing all the gear and horses.
Oh, okay.
The saddles and the bags and everything else, and he made sure that he got romance novels to do the romance stuff instead, because it's just a lot of reaction shots.
Okay.
A lot of close-ups.
That's interesting. So maybe they wanted to do more Davy Jones stories, and Schroeder just said, I'm not drawing another ship. Sorry, guys.
Boy, all those ships.
Yeah. So, Jones kind of verbally toys with Teach for a bit, and then he goes out on patrol, hoping to catch him.
But somehow Jones' little comment there rattles him about, I wonder whether your actions will allow other people to do the same.
Yeah. I mean, he's telling Teach, I think you're the pirate. And, and Teach, you get this impression of his arrogance. He probably was just naturally assuming his whole coming in complaining to the captain thing.
No one could possibly suspect me.
Yes. I look just like the most famous pirate of all time, and I act mean. Why would anyone think anything ill about me? But then we get...
Yeah, I mean, he only died like 50 or 60 years before.
Yeah.
1717, wasn't it? Something like that.
1720 something. 1720. Early, in the 1720s. I forget the year.
Well, maybe he did figure out how to become immortal. He never actually died.
That's true.
He could be among us today.
That happened in at least one novel, on Stranger Tides. Let's see. So then we jump ahead to day after day. They're on patrol trying to catch the pirate, whether it's Teach or somebody else.
You mentioned Stranger Tides. We need to actually mention the book that all of the Pirates of the Caribbean things were based on.
Yes, and
just in case anybody didn't know who was watching.
Yes,
this.
and they used On Stranger Tides for the 4th movie, although they only took a few vague points from it. It's not.
Yes, it's basically we'll use Blackbeard.
Yeah, yeah, basically, and the Fountain of Youth. Those are the only 2 points they took from the novel. And so it makes it clear that they're searching around for days. They go through a storm. They go through a gale. But they don't see a
proves his
single
seamanship
pilot.
because
Yes.
he's able to go and pilot the ship through this horrible storm. Everyone is has a lot of confidence in him that he can do it.
Yep. But it's also, I think it's kind of neat that his first plan doesn't work. It just shows he's not like omnipotent hero.
Yeah, he's not infallible hero.
And
that is for certain from Willie's point of view.
Yes. Okay. And this sunset with the ship red, I think, is another nice panel.
That is another nice panel, but I must say I really like the fact that he's not in a crow's nest doing his lookout, because they did not always necessarily have them top right panel. And I think it's just a really good angle, and most people try and avoid feet.
Yep.
Most of us are just trying to avoid feet.
Okay, but on their way home, there was pirate activity, but they missed it. And it actually kind of makes sense. If Teach is trying to be a pirate but not openly be a pirate, he can't take ships captured. He can just loot them and then burn them and leave no witnesses. So from Teach's point of view, ignoring all morality, of course, this is a perfectly sensible
Or even
tactic.
historical Teach.
Yes. Yep. So they spot the ship and go over to look for survivors.
It's quite interesting that they have him withdraw a mile.
Well, if you were on a wooden ship, you were terrified of fire.
Well, yes. I mean, you are worried about embers and smokes, but embers from the ship and stuff. But honestly, a mile.
No. Yeah, but
it's a long way to row.
It is a long way to row. But
well,
actually,
no, they drop them off, and then they say withdraw to a mile, and then we'll come back. For all we know, they've got a way to signal them to come back.
Yeah. Well, they would.
They've got flags.
They've got flags, or they can do a mirror in the sun or whatever. They'll have a way of signaling. And they do find a survivor. And once again, I like little details like the seagulls up there.
The rats with wings?
Yes, the rats with wings. And this
once
guy,
again, we live in Florida. So.
And I think the artist does a good job of making this guy look properly distressed. I mean, that guy just looks like he's in awful shape.
He is. Even his basic ink lines are not as clean.
Yeah. And Schroeder, by the way, inked this as well as penciled it. I don't think I mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, very common for the time because they're not going to pay 2 people.
Yeah.
That's why they could sell it for 10 cents.
Yep. And so they question him, but he can't ID the ship that sunk them. I didn't get it. Yeah, that bottom panel, he's saying, I didn't get a chance to see. I was standing by one of our deck guns when their broadside hit us, and it blew me over the side. So, the ship was attacked and sunk.
More loyally, investigation.
Yes.
Because do not lead the witness, sir.
Yeah. And there's a clue there that they got close to the ship by doing a distress signal, which was the same trick that Teach used when he came into port. So, and once again, I think that fits the sort of arrogance they give Teach. If a trick works once, it'll work over and over again, and no one's ever going to suspect him.
Well, honestly, if his actual plan had worked and there was no survivors, it would have worked continuously.
Yeah, that's true. It would have. And nice detail in the cabin. The background and the grains of the woods and all of that. So once again, I really like the illustration in this, the pencil work in this, and the ink work. And you find out that they weren't carrying a valuable cargo, but they were carrying cash, and so
they were carrying the payroll.
That means inside information, and
because they came from Boston too.
Yes. Which I think in modern police investigation, interrogation, I think he violated a rule of evidence by giving a leading question there. But of course, that wouldn't have been a concern.
Well, he gave the leading question earlier.
Yeah.
In this one, he's making a supposition in front of the witness.
Yes. And now we hear, we were talking about Davy Jones showing no emotions when they tried to kill Willie earlier, but if Willie gets on his nerves, then by golly, you young scamp, get to the galley where you belong.
How dare you violate interrogation rules? But once again, he's a child, so he's not a real person.
Yes.
I'll get more into that later on.
Mm-hmm. Another cool shot right there. I just love all the long shots of the ships.
Yeah, nice. That's a nice establishing shot for back in the harbor.
Yep. So they're back home with the survivor who passed out before he could give more information.
Now, one of the interesting things is that Bull Slocum, who has been very disengaged and very disinterested about everything that goes on, who's actually supposed to be the more aggressive character, it's the first mate that says, "Why don't we just blow him out of the water now? We know."
Yeah. Yeah. But there's no legal
in harbor.
But there's no legal proof, and that's important to Davy. You know,
yes,
no,
but
he says
for
right
all
here,
the
no
physical
proof.
similarities, there is now a big difference in the fact that I obey the law, and he's guilty enough for me.
Yeah.
Shoot him like God.
We shot him. We shot back first.
Yeah. And then later that same day on the deck, and this is a bit of an awkward cut. Well, is it on his deck? Is it on the Sea Rover's deck?
Yes. Not until you pull back do you realize it's
not,
actually on the dock, not
it's
the deck.
on a dock, not a deck. Yeah. So it's a little bit of an awkward. But the point of this scene is to show that Davy Jones can handle himself physically.
Yes, he's not prissy lawyer.
Right. He gets Teach mad, and he just. Even though Teach is bigger and
but he's still fair because he gives him fair warning.
Yeah.
When he does not comply, then he is shown what
it's
for.
Right here. Yes.
I did like
that. For you to take your hands off me.
Like I've given you fair warning. Like going through the mental checklist of
and then just text him.
Legal
Davy Jones, Davy Jones, sea lawyer.
Yes. But what is interesting here is what I think is our point of view characters, the guys we identify with, Bull and Willie. They're there with weapons. They saw their captain in trouble, and they just grabbed, a sword and a musket respectively, and they came running out. So
yes, but this is like our second kind of sly expression on Jones' face that kind of starts to let you know that there's probably more to this guy going on underneath him than what he's showing. But he should show it to us more so that we can like him better.
Yeah, I'm going to say something. Real quick. The main issue I'm having is it seems like you keep saying the point of view characters are Willie and Bill. Bull, sorry. Yeah. But I don't think it's ever really clear. It seems to kind of jump between who the point of view character is. And in fact, it kind of, in a lot of ways, Davy Jones. I mean, he's the one who's pushing forward a lot of the action. So that's actually my biggest issue with it.
So
Willie basically becomes the kid character, and it's obviously geared towards kids.
Yeah,
so that makes sense.
And most of the readers' comics were largely kids at that time.
But if you're going to do that, then treating him within the story, even how they would have treated him in actual life, doesn't fit as well.
Yeah.
Because it makes it harder for the reader to go ahead and like the characters around him who are treating him like a second-class citizen.
Yeah,
and who aren't even caring about his well-being at all.
Yeah.
Usually in these stories, they will at least be caring about the kid's well-being, even if they don't listen to the kid.
Yeah, I can see that point.
There is one other possible interpretation, and that is that the writer, as a child, was constantly ignored and narrated by people around him. So subconsciously, when he goes to do this, that just flows out of him, so that even though he knows that you're supposed to be liking Davy Jones and everything else, they're still the authority figures, and when I was a child, authority figures just never believed me.
Yeah.
They were always very skeptical of me. But it does seem to go and switch points of view. That certainly is a very apt.
I think as well as all the examples of how this is good sequential storytelling. There are a few. Actually, I'm not going to bother. People will laugh at that. There are a few abrupt cuts when they change from one scene to another or jump over some time. But I mostly like it, and we're going to get to the.
This also feels, because there are no advertisements, this actually is filling up its full 22 or 24 pages, whatever.
It's actually 33 pages.
33, wow,
yeah.
It's a giant size 33 pager. Because it covers the back
and for only 10 cents.
Yes.
Jeez, we need to invent time travel. All we need is time travel and a roll of dimes from before 1954, and then we're set.
No, we want to go earlier than that. We want to get
we want to get Action Comics #1.
Yes.
We want to get Fantasy, which one was it for Spider-Man?
Amazing Fantasy 16, 15.
No, you realize no one would believe they were original. It's like, this obviously isn't 70 years old, and they put us in jail for trying to forge comics. So that would
no, what we'd have to do is we'd have to go back, buy them, and then store them someplace for that time.
Yeah.
And then pick them back up.
Okay.
We got this plan.
Okay. We're good. But Davy Jones' new plan now is to follow Teach out secretly when Teach leaves the harbor next, because just cruising around looking for him randomly didn't work. And Teach suspects
he was still willing to give him the benefit of a doubt at that point.
Yeah. But he wants to tail him out of the harbor. But Teach wants to put a top to that. His first mate here... A stop to that. His first mate here, with that facial structure, there's no way he could have been anything but a pirate. The poor guy was...
The mustache doesn't help.
But
no, I'm sorry. The mustache says that I could have been part of the Mongol hordes.
Yep. and Teach, has his crew tow the ship out to get out secretly and quietly, which is a good plan.
Yes, you're not going through all the bother and noise of pulling down all those sails.
Well done, with good use of shadows and silhouette. Just the feeling that it's dark. Is that done with the ink later on, Ben?
No, that is just. It's an old-fashioned technique that you actually do just draw your pen across, and you go and you just leave spaces open.
Okay.
If you, partly because you go and you don't have to draw as many lines if you leave the space for the moon already open. Because the only other method is that after you draw all the lines, you then take white out to it.
Yeah. Okay. So, but it's really nicely done. And to stop Davy Jones from following him, they have a couple guys sneak on board, the first mate and somebody else, to sabotage the ship. And I think once again, it's the action is laid out very well.
I also like the way that they knock out the guy that they're about to blow up.
Yes. Well, of course he can't be around to give out the alarm while they're setting the explosive. So
but if he was dead.
Well, yeah.
Which they're going to be doing to him in a few minutes.
Oh,
anyway.
I see. They could have just knifed him. Well, the belaying pin was probably the handiest thing he had. So.
I'm sorry, that mustache says I am equipped with a knife between my teeth.
Yes.
It's a book.
And I love this scene. I love the interaction between the two characters there, because Willie hears something. He's trying to wake up Bull, who just, go away.
Let me sleep. Let me smoke.
Let me sleep. And Willie...
Pretty soon it'll be let me eat.
Bites his hand. And this really defines their relationship, because he bites him to wake him up, and Bull's first reaction isn't to beat the snot out of him. It's, okay, maybe there is something. Maybe you're right. Because he knows Willie, once again, he knows Willie isn't Scrappy-Doo. He's just going to yell alarms for no reason.
Yes, but that's because Tuesday and Thursdays are murder attempts.
Yes, I know. And he does say. And
so on Friday, when you bite me, that means that it's time to move on to chapter 3.
Another hint at their relationship is here, where he says, "If this is one of your crazy jokes." So it's another hint at their relationship there.
But that one line does go and provide cover for Captain Davy Jones, because that implies that he does occasionally make jokes like this.
Yeah.
Or he did it once and no one ever lets him forget.
I wouldn't know what that's about.
So they interrupt the guys planning the explosive. The first mate there is apparently a horrible shot. If you miss once with one of those, you're out of bullets. So
yes, because he's not carrying a brace or a bandolier.
Good use of lighting again, I think. You can see what's going on, but it reminds you that it's dark and you've just got moonlight or whatever to light everything up.
Yeah, it's only that bullseye lantern that's.
Yep.
Well, it's actually an open lantern.
Yeah. So bad guys are getting away. Bull's going to follow him, but Davy Jones shows up on deck and has a better plan, which is just throw their bomb back to them.
And I love the pose, 13 years before, of the Batman ready to throw the bomb over the side of the pier.
This is where Batman learned that trick.
I also love the fact that he's just so ridiculously strong, pumped up on adrenaline, that he can just tear those ropes apart.
Yes.
I really, really like the shot of him on the edge.
That's a great shot
right there. It is.
Brilliantly
and he continues to make really good use of lighting and shadow through the whole thing.
He also wants to say, this is a composed shot that's not a composed shot, because he's not encircled by the moon. It's just off to the right.
Yeah.
But even cool. That is...
That's a very conscious composition.
Yes, it is.
So, okay, so that blows up two of Teach's guys. And I assume Teach's plan was they would hang out in, because he's already gone. So these guys were probably just sneaking back into Boston and hanging out and getting drunk until Teach came back again, I would assume. But they're blown up. So the heck with them.
Fortunately, historical illusion. Historical illusion. When he was holding the colony, for
hostage. He blockaded Charlton Harbor, the real Blackbeard.
The real Blackbeard, and he sent two of his guys to go and get the ransom, and they never showed back up because they got drunk and passed out in the town.
Well, there we go. It would be nice to think that's a deliberate thing. Okay.
We'll go into more of those kinds of things.
Yeah, the ship's not destroyed, so he's able to get out quickly after Blackbeard, who is brazenly doing the skull and crossbones. So
at this point, he's like, the jig is up.
Yeah, the jig is up.
I just tried to blow up somebody.
The last 14 pages of this are what I think is a really, really, really well done.
It's the Battle of Five Armies in comic book form. It's the 40-minute fight.
Yes, it is. And whoops, that's the same page. I'm sorry, we left out a page because I copied the same page twice. So sorry about that. People watching this video, you were missing one page of Davy and the rest of the crew fixing what little damage was done and coming out after Teach, who just
and it's really sad because it is a beautiful picture of the ship. It is a beautiful picture.
So sorry about that, everyone. I tell you, I will add this at the end of the video so that you can all see the page you missed. But the panel of Davy's ship with the sails damaged, it really is nicely done. So,
and even the Teach portrait at the bottom is pretty nice.
It is.
Got very lustrous beard.
Okay, now Blackbeard or Teach proves to be a savvy fighter. The trick here, and it's something that would work in real life, is he puts out this raft as a sea anchor, so that at the right moment he can use the drag of that to pull his ship around and rake the Pilgrim, Davy Jones's ship, with a full broadside.
Yes, you saw this trick in Battleship if you watched that movie.
I didn't watch that movie.
Except they pull it with the USS Missouri or whatever.
Okay. What, they couldn't turn its turrets?
No, it had to do with the alien tracking system.
Oh, okay.
That if it represented a threat, it automatically shot at you.
Okay.
So they went and they kept themselves coming towards them so that they didn't have their guns pointed at them.
Yep.
They drop the anchor and it whips them around to bring them into the broadside, and then they fire.
Okay. So
it's a Hasbro film.
Yes. Okay, but the action is laid out very well. You understand what's going on, and you can see where the ships are in relation to each other. So I like it.
And there is a wordy explanation of what he's actually doing with the sea anchor.
Yes. So do you guys think it's too wordy, too much narration, or does it fit the story?
I would say a little too much. The story did kind of drag at times. It's honestly a story that might even have done better in a two-parter format. It's a long.
Some places seem scrunched. Some places seemed a little expanded. Yeah. It doesn't bother me, but I think that part of it is because of you're still much more about books and literature.
Yeah. At
this point in time, we're to the point that we have comic books without any words.
Yeah.
Sometimes that are just all cinematic. So this is more than a lot of us are used to these days.
Yeah.
So if you're reading The Hobbit, or Lord of the Rings, it's not the same as describing every hillock.
Yeah, but I do still feel sometimes the narration goes into the realm of telling you what you can see, which is always a pet peeve of mine, especially with comic books.
It's always the tension between art and literature, which is being married together in this strange
but what I agree,
format.
I largely like most of the narration, but I agree with Michael. There's a few panels where it tells you what's really just kind of obvious, and it was more than you needed. But the visuals are still really nice. Here, he's taken damage from the broadside, but he pulls the Pilgrim around so that they're broadside to broadside, and you can see the Pilgrim is a much smaller ship, which is going to affect the tactics, because they're trying to grapple and get aboard. And this panel here, might be a reference to Blackbeard's real life final battle, where he called off the taunt, "Why don't you guys come aboard?"
Yes.
And Lieutenant Maynard, the British guy coming to get him, said, "We'll be there."
There are in a minute. There are several things that go very much to the final battle with Maynard in this one, and you and I will probably mention a lot of them.
Yeah. So, but it's a kind of a back and forth battle, and I think it's very effective. They try to grapple the Sea Rover to get aboard.
on Coloration 2, I also like the fact that they point out that the Sea Rover is a heavy oaken ship, and that the Pilgrim is all nicely painted. All of their boards are painted nice and white, except for the ones that are gilded.
Yeah, so it shows you he's got the well-disciplined.
Yeah, he's got
Teach has got the crew
ship
of thugs.
Yeah, his ship is very well kept up.
Yeah.
The other one is a very utilitarian ship.
Yep. So they, they get some grapples aboard, but they have to climb up. Teach has got the high ground here in the battle, and that's going to directly affect their first boarding attempt is going to fail because of that. So the battle, I think, unfolds in a logical manner, and I think it's really a very exciting battle because of that. So they are driven off. They get to the top, and Teach is I think a shot, rather than this close-up, a wider shot to show some of his crew pointing muskets and pistols in that direction might have been more effective.
That certainly could have increased the danger quotient.
Yes.
But that shot is about, it's these two men, these two captains, it's
That's
their
true.
wills that are actually
That's
at
true.
contest
From that
here.
point of view, it's a very good panel. I hadn't thought about it in that context. So he has to retreat, and it becomes a sniper battle for a while with them picking each other off.
I like the crow's nest fighters.
The crow's nest,
snipers
yes.
and the crow's nest is just a nice shot.
This is a really nice shot. We were talking about Davy Jones earlier. Didn't seem to worry that much about Willie almost getting killed. He does spend the lives of his men like pennies here, doesn't he? But if you're going to fight pirates, and his men were all volunteers, so
you signed up for this, folks.
You signed up for this, guys. Okay, so Teach gets out a mortar. And there were ships, usually not the fully rigged ships like this, because it was kind of a little dangerous to use this on a fully rigged ship. They were usually in the bows of specially designed gunships. But it was a real weapon. You would light a fuse on the cannon, and an expert gunner would know exactly how much gunpowder could put in to make it lob the right distance, and it would explode.
Yeah, so you would not overshoot, and it
there
would
goes
bust
stud,
decks.
and then boom, when the fuse goes down.
It did exactly this.
So, after this is, Davy Jones and his men have to take cover below deck, and then Teach starts shelling them. So the ship's just going to get blown up. It might catch fire. There's a lot of danger on. So Davy's got to react.
Even when you're hiding below, as it blows the deck, you're getting rained with shrapnel.
Yep. So they got to do something, and that means taking a chance to run out. And he's got men up in the mast, and he's going to send them over to the other ship basically by cutting the mast down.
Yeah, this is his Kirk move.
Yes.
You're crazy. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Don't worry, it'll work out fine somehow.
Yes, I know.
It bugs me to see him. It's just like it would have been nice to see the next issue of the comic, dealing with the fact that he just crippled his own ship.
Yeah.
It has to go into.
Well, Chris, if the ship's gonna sink because he doesn't win the fight, then he's out anyway.
Plus, they've already established that they're not that far from Boston.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's fair enough. What is interesting is that later on the mast falling over with some guys in it is enough of a distraction for Davy to get on with the rest of his men and finish the fight off. But you never find out the casualties of these guys who are just kind of dropped on board Teach's ship as a distraction. It was, so...
But there is an implication that they actually didn't suffer. They suffered very light or none.
Yeah. Because
they are the first wave that comes in.
And then Davy and the others come up behind them real quick, yeah.
Which is actually, once again, another historical illusion, but backwards, because it was actually on Maynard's ship.
Yeah.
That he was below decks,
right.
He had his other people out,
right.
and they managed to come up behind him. And they sandwiched him on his ship.
Yeah, that's true. So this is a nice panel. The one mast falling down.
It is, even though I don't think he gave his men up there any warning either.
No, I don't think so.
So just
guys, be ready for anything. What do you mean, Captain? What do you mean by everything?
Hopefully they would have figured out when they saw two guys with axes.
Unless this is what happens on Saturdays.
Okay, yesterday was the day for Willie being murdered, and today is the day for the captain to do something insane. Okay, so he gets on board, and it becomes a fight between... yes, I left out another page.
I was going to say, wait a minute.
We're going to jump ahead here. Yeah, I doubled the page again. Sorry about that, guys. So
you may need to find a way to keep our audio and redo the visual.
Yeah. So we're missing a page where he sneaks his men through the gun ports and I'll put this at the end of the video too, so we'll see both missing pages, and gets his men up behind Teach, and then the battle, while the rest of the battle is going on, we get to concentrate on Teach and Davy Jones going one-on-one, and it's, I think, a pretty good sword fight. You've got the shifting camera angle, you've got plenty of medium shots. When they show a close-up of some sort, it's for appropriate dramatic reason.
Yes, and the captain is very much a fencer as opposed to a sword fighter.
Yep. And he manages to, knock the pistol out of Teach's. You can't argue, why didn't Teach just shoot first thing? Although he might have just wanted to kill Davy Jones with his bare hands.
Well,
he may have been saving it for the opportune moment.
And also, I'm going to assume that Davy is a good sword fighter. He's probably keeping his profile very slim.
Yeah.
And with the accuracy of the pistol, he might have wanted to wait with the pistol until he was right on top of it.
Yeah, he's waiting for the opportune moment, is the way that I read that. The gun isn't your opening thing, it's your reserve.
Yep, and then so Teach yells for the rest of his men to take out Davy Jones, but he doesn't have any rest of them. They've been defeated. Willie apparently was in the thick of the fight, so we need someone to hack those guys to death. Send the cabin boy. But of course,
I'm the cabin man now.
But that actually would have been the mindset at the time. He's a part of the crew. He's got to do the fighting. You had 12-year-old midshipmen leading squads of guys in the British Navy on boarding parties. So it was your job.
You also had them coming back missing limbs.
So Teach is going to, he's lost, but Davy Jones still wants to go.
I'm a law-abiding man. Fair warning again.
Yep.
Surrender and you can go and dance the jig at the end of a rope.
Yep. But he doesn't want to hang, so he'll go this way.
Well, he's like, I'm going to hang either way. I'm going to take you out first.
Yep.
And he does pull a good move with the strike to the punch.
Yeah, he does.
Another historical illusion, reversed though. Edward Teach, Blackbeard, with his great strength, actually was supposed to have broken Maynard's sword.
Yeah, because they were actually using, the pirates, Blackbeard and his guys were using big heavy cutlasses, and Maynard and his guys had rapiers, which was a poor decision, and was coming back to haunt them before Maynard's men hiding below came out and turned the tide of the battle. Yeah. It's the only ad. It was a house.
And it's for their own,
It was for their own stuff. Ben Bowie got several four-color appearances, and then
back to David Bowie.
Yeah. And Turok was one of the most successful Dell Comics. He ran until the 80s after he got his own book. And Sir Lancelot, who I think that was for Sir Lancelot's only appearance. Hard to make a hero out of a guy who eventually has an affair with his best friend's wife. So
he is French.
Okay. Now this is on the inside back cover, which is why it was in black and white. Dell often
standard practice.
Yes, they often use the back cover to finish the story. And the inside back cover was never colored, though the very back cover was. I have no idea why. But we see him. He's got another pistol hidden in there, or he picks up his pistol from before, doesn't he? And he's he gets shot by his own pistol when Davy Jones struggles with him, so he's done.
Yeah, which is one of the few kind of ones that feels very awkward. I mean, it is awkward to shoot yourself. In a fight. Yeah. But that particular panel just feels extra awkward.
Yeah, because usually they're trying not to be graphic, which I'm perfectly fine with. We don't need to see blood and guts in this. But the way that's drawn,
the hand angle would be a little different.
Right. The angle doesn't quite seem right. So.
And they're also doing a thing that really, really bugs me. It's really bad in shonen comics and also in Western comics as well. We can't let the hero actually kill someone, even though there's a lot of death that's directly involved because of Davy Jones. So we can't actually let him kill somebody. So even though it would look better and probably work better to just have him pick up the gun, like wrest the gun from his hands and just shoot him, but the villain must off himself, which is always a pet peeve of mine.
But see, the thing is once again about the awkward hand positioning, just because of the way that Jones is holding the gun, it actually reads to me more like, okay, I'm going to make you shoot yourself. Yeah. It doesn't even feel like an accident.
Right, and he's killed most of
He's like grabbed the gun and he's actually pulling it so that trigger finger fires the gun.
It just looks so awkward.
It's a very awkward panel, but for what it is, that's almost how I would have read it.
And the back cover ties things up.
They did change his jawline. Yeah, he's starting to look a little. Johnson's starting to look a little bit different than Jones.
Okay, so it's like at this point the artist was realizing that he had to differentiate him. But they really needed to have changed Mr. Johnson's character design to be more.
Yeah, there's still a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
But once again, people can only look so good, and there's a good looking is a narrow range.
Yeah. And of course, I have no idea how amongst merchant ships in the United States there was probably no prize money rules or anything, but just sinking the Sea Rover rather than taking it back and selling it.
Or even donating
it over to the Navy or whatever.
Yes, to the Navy that is.
Yeah, but they wanted this dramatic shot of the pirate ship sinking, so you knew the bad guys were done, and that's from dramatic reasons that's probably okay.
Well, also questions like where Davy Jones is going to get the money to fix his ship.
Yeah, well, apparently he's a successful merchant, so he might
not only
bank or be able to get a loan from the next person who hires him to carry cargo or whatever.
Yeah, so, even if there wasn't a bounty yet put out on this guy, there's going to be some kind of reward either intrinsically or just because the citizenry that those upstanding citizens, the pillars of the community that asked him to go do this, are going to go and spot him that money because he did end the threat.
Yeah. So I can see that he's going to do okay. But I'd forgotten this. This is a reference to his name. He sent another pirate to Davy Jones's locker.
Yes, so, I think that was supposed to be the payoff of the entire thing. Was supposed to be that one panel.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, oh, okay.
Okay, and so they're home.
We know you had to.
Bad guys are defeated, and that's Davy Jones. And I think, Michael, your criticisms about Davy's personality, I think are valid. But I think his character could have evolved into something more personable. And I really think that if this had been a continuing series, making Willie and Bull our point of view characters that we identify with as readers would have been the way to go.
I agree.
Well,
I think that would have been the best way to do it.
Yeah. Once again, from a character little expression point, I mean, he's very serious and very kind of like, oh, I had to, we've had this awful fight and everything else. And at the end, you're trying to bring things upbeat. But he's kind of like, looks like, yay, we killed everybody, fix this ship.
And hire more crew. It's like 2/3 of my guys are dead. Okay, well that's...
Well, if it was a pirate crew, it would have been like, more money for the rest of you.
Yeah. Okay, so that's it. That's 4-color number 598. I hope you enjoyed listening to us. I will have the 2 pages we were missing at the end of this. If we did this for a living, we would just re-recorded the whole thing, but we're not going to spend another hour of our life repeating what we said.
One of the things that we should have done, even though we don't do this for a living, is we should have identified all of ourselves.
We will right now.
At the beginning.
We will now. So, my name's Tim DeForest. I keep a blog at Comics, Old Time Radio, and other cool stuff. By the way, if you go to comicbookplus.com, this comic is in the public domain, and you can read it there. But this is my blog, Comics, Old Time Radio, and other cool stuff. I've also written a couple of books, and you can get links to the books at my website. So go there and read my blog and buy my books and make me wealthy beyond the dreams of avarice.
And I'm Benjamin Alvarez, ben3deviantart.com. Haven't drawn comics in a while, but that is still what I enjoy doing.
Yep, and that's a sample of Ben's artwork. You can see just a lot of magnificent art at his DeviantArt website. And
I'm Michael Pelish. Hopefully, in a couple of weeks, I will have my blog set up at the madadventurersociety.com.
Oh, cool. That's a good name.
Under Dice Hoarder. And, I'm going to be doing a article series on just role-playing games and how they connect with media and culture as large.
Well, that's cool. That's a good idea. And I look forward to reading that. And if you go to my blog, you can get a link to the fan commentary for the Ray Harryhausen film Golden Voyage of Sinbad that the 3 of us did a couple months ago. So you
as
can
well as
enjoy
a couple
that
of other
well.
things, isn't there?
There's also the podcast that Ben and I and Mike's father Joe did about board games and comic books. Those are the 3 collaborative things. Okay. This and those other 2 things so far. we seem to have fun doing this, so we'll probably do more.
And we hope you had some fun too.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to us ramble on and go on side tracks.
So okay, and that we're done talking now. I will put up the two pages that were missing. So I apologize that this wasn't perfect, but
we're human.
You got what you paid for. So,
Live, everybody.
Mm-hmm.